Welcome to today's webinar, detailing the updates to the LIHWAP quarterly report for quarter 3. My name is Sarah Dalgleish and I'm a program specialist with the Office of Community Services. The purpose of this webinar is to inform low-income household water assistance program grant recipients about the updates made to the quarterly report that will go into effect for quarter 3 of fiscal year 2022, covering data from April through June 2022. By the end of today's webinar, you should have a better understanding of the new report form, including the new information we are soliciting, on changes to vendor agreements and service area, detailing the use of LIHWAP funds this fiscal year, and lastly, we will review some helpful tips and reminders for completing the quarterly report. Before beginning our discussion, we will review the purposes of quarterly reporting. LIHWAP grant recipients are required to submit quarterly and annual reports to OCS as required by the LIHWAP terms and conditions. The LIHWAP reporting process is designed to provide critical information for this emergency effort. Reports submitted by grant recipients will help to ensure the LIHWAP, an emergency and temporary program, is implemented effectively and efficiently, provide reliable and complete fiscal and household data to OCS, analysis and reporting to Congress and the public, and respond to questions from Congress, Department of Health and Human Services, Office of Management and Budget, White House, and other interested parties in a timely and accurate manner. The quarterly reporting process began in federal fiscal year 2022. The first quarterly report covered October through December 2021 and was due January 31st, 2022. The second quarterly report covered January through March 2022 and was due April 29th, 2022. These first two reports used an older report format. The new report format will go into effect for the third quarterly report, which covers April through June 2022 and is due July 29th, 2022. All grant recipients will receive the updated quarterly report form from their program specialist, with quarter 1 and quarter 2 data already inputted. For quarter 3, due Friday, July 29th, please refer to the third tab on the Excel spreadsheet that says Quarterly Q3. When you review the new report form, you will see that sections 1 and 2 are exactly the same as before. The first change to the report form is in section 3 under LIHWAP implementation information. The questions asked in this section are reduced to 3. These questions require the recipient to identify if there are any changes to the vendor and subrecipient agreements or service area covered. The first question asks, are there any changes in your agreements with water vendors from the previous quarters? For this question, mark yes or no. If you mark yes, please use the box below to detail the change in your vendor agreements. If you mark no, you can indicate not applicable in the response box. The next question asks, are there any changes to which portion of your service area are accepting applications and implementing LIHWAP from quarter 2? Recipients should report if there are any changes to the service area in their state, territory, or tribe that is accepting applications for LIHWAP benefits. For instance, has another region or subrecipient started accepting applications during the quarter that is being reported on? If there are no changes to the report, enter not applicable for the response. The third question asks, if applicable, have you executed agreements with your subgrantees? If no, please explain. If applicable, for instance, if the grant recipient is not administering the entire LIHWAP program themselves, the grant recipient should report if they have executed agreements with all the necessary subrecipients, including community action agencies, local city or county governments, or other nonprofit organizations. If the recipient has not executed agreements with all subrecipients, the recipient should provide an explanation explaining why they have not executed all agreements. Lastly, grant recipients must submit an attached document with a list of the water vendors that are participating in LIHWAP, whether it be through a formal vendor agreement or LIHWAP grant recipients' policies and procedures. Again, in addition to the quarterly report, please submit a list of all your participating vendors, along with your quarterly report. Please submit this list in a separate Excel to your program specialist. Another section for the quarter 3 quarterly report is section 5 titled Use of Funds. This section requires the recipient to report use of LIHWAP funding by funding source that has been obligated during the reporting period. Grant recipients are required to provide estimates of obligation for both the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2021 and the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. In reporting obligation of funds to date for the reported fiscal year, grant recipients should follow their state, territory, or tribal definition of obligation. The changes to Section 3 and Section 5 constitute the updates to the quarterly report. The remaining sections are the same as previous quarters. Now that you understand the changes to the quarterly report, I will quickly review some tips for completing and submitting your quarterly report. The first tip is no matter how big or small the accomplishment is, we want to hear about it. The quarterly report is an opportunity to share about all the great work being done and allows us to share success stories with our stakeholders. If you need further incentive, those with a compelling story or useful implementation strategy may find themselves featured on the Low-Income Household Water Assistance Program monthly news splash. In that same vein, please err on the side of providing too much detail and specifics. This report is a great opportunity to vocalize not only successes, but challenges and gaps in program coverage. The more detail and specifics you provide, the better informed we are and able to respond to those needs. Lastly, please don't forget to compile a list of all vendors participating in your program, whether through a vendor agreement or a LIHWAP grant recipient processes and procedures. This is a new requirement, and we understand putting a list together may take time. We recommend keeping a running list in order to ease the administrative burden of this request moving forward. Again, please submit this list in a separate Excel spreadsheet to your program specialist along with your quarterly report. Next, I will review some tips for submitting your report. First, please submit your form in the original Excel format. It is important that we receive the Excel version of the report so that it can be used to update our data dashboard. Second, if you are struggling to get the e-signature feature of the form to work, you are allowed to type your signature into the box. Third, we are not requiring that your designated official sign the quarterly report. The signature of whoever is completing and validating the contents of the report is sufficient. Lastly, please submit your reports to LIHWAP@acf.hhs.gov, and remember to keep your program specialist copied on the submission. This concludes the LIHWAP Quarterly Report Update webinar. By attending this webinar, hopefully you are more comfortable with the new quarterly report form, how to include updates on changes to vendor agreements and service area, how to include information on the use of program funds, and lastly, we hope you walk away with some helpful tips on how to complete and submit the quarterly report. Thank you for watching the webinar.